Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this simple hero section with all the lightning effect you're seeing there. If you're new to my channel, kindly hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. To get started, I have some resources here, which include these colors and some text here. I'm going to click on the frame icon and add a MacBook Pro 14 inches. From here, we can set the background color of this to black. So I'm going to select this, press I on my keyboard and select this black color. Let's add layout grid to this. So I'm going to click the plus sign here to add a layout grid. I'm going to change this to columns, and my columns count, I'll set that to 12 so we can see, and the gutters we can use 16. Margins, I'll set this to 120. Once this has been set, I'm going to close this and I'll zoom in so we can see where our margin is stopping. Now, click on the Figma icon, go to view and make sure that your ruler is checked, just like mine. Once you've done that, you will see this ruler at the end here. So click and drag and then drop this at this point. So once you have this, we're going to do the same thing for this other edge here. I'll click and then drag and drop this here as well. You can always zoom in to make sure that this is aligned properly to avoid any mistake. Now we can select this frame again and decide to hide this, don't delete it. So now the next thing is to add a logo. So hit letter T on your keyboard and we're going to use exchange. The first thing we're going to do here is to make sure we're changing this to Nonito Sans, and the font weight should be bold. Our font size, I'm going to change that to 22. Once you've done this, we can as well change the line height here to 32. Once you're okay, we can then change the color of this, our logo. Now, I'm going to use the gradient for this. We have two colors, so I'm going to pick the first one will be this, and the second one here, we can still use this other one here. We're going to then change the direction. Make sure you're clicking on the dot so we can change the direction of this flow. So I'm going to drag this and also point to this other end here. Now we have our logo. If you want anything different, just do well to play with the direction of the gradient. So let's quickly create the links item. I'm going to hit letter T again on my keyboard. This time I'm going to type outside. This will be customers. For this, I'm going to change the font size to 14, and for the font weight, we're going to be using medium. This time, I'm going to reduce this to 20, that's the line height. Once we have this, press Shift A on your keyboard to add the auto layout to this. Now, I'm going to reduce the size, that's for the top and bottom, to 4, and for the left and right, we can as well change that to 4. Now, rename this to link. After doing this, we can then convert this to a component and select the text inside here and create a property. This, I'm going to use the plus sign here and name this label. Press enter and we have label. Now we can create all the properties inside this our design. But before we continue, let's make sure we're changing the fill of this to white. So I'm going to select the color and change that to white. So to see this properly, we can select this empty frame and decide to adjust the color to a gray color so that we can see this our text. Now we can click on assets and go to component, drag one of this and drop this here. The next thing we want to add, I'm going to duplicate this and then duplicate this again and again. So we have 5 links. Developers. And we can select this and I'm going to change this to about us. So this is going to be blog, and the last one will be support. Once you've done this, we can select these items here, press Shift A to put them in an auto layout. Once they are inside an auto layout, we can then add some properties to them. So here, spacing between them, I'll set that to 18. And then the spacing on the left and right, let's go with 8. And top and bottom, I'm going to set that to 8 again as well. So let me see. I think something is missing here. I mistakenly did not type the 8. So we have this. So let's add a fill to this and change the color to this, our color here. So I'm going to select this here as our color. So after changing that, we can then add a stroke to this our item. So I'll select this, hit the plus sign here to add a stroke. So for the stroke color, I'm going to use this our color here. So now you notice we have this stroke around this our item. So let's select this item and change the corner radius. I'll be using 44 because the height is 44, but you can use half of that and you still get this rounded corners. So we now have this our corner. We're left with the button before we start the arrangement. So I'll still come outside here and hit letter T on my keyboard. Let me do that close to this. Letter T on my keyboard. This is going to be a button, so become a partner. So after doing this, I'll hit, or let's change the properties of the text first. This is going to be 16 and we can increase this to 26. That's the line height. So hit Shift A on your keyboard and let's add some spacings here. So this is going to be 12 and for this I'll reduce that to 8. So we can add a fill to this, our design, and then add a corner radius. I'll use 42 for this. Once we have this, we can then rename this to button. Once it has been renamed, we can come to the top here and convert this to a component. But for this component, I'm going to drag this somewhere here because we're going to create a variant for this. So let's select the text and add a property to this called label again. So once this has been added, I can select this and then create a variant. Make sure you're selecting the component, hit the plus sign. We have a variant. So this is going to be, you can rename this to, let's say, primary, like so. And let's change the fill of this to this our color, which is this. And the text color, we can change that to white. So once you change this to white, we can then use this our button in here. So here on the right hand side, make sure you're selecting assets, click and then drag this somewhere here. So I can select item 1, item 2 by holding shift and then hold shift again item 3. Hit Shift A to make sure that we are putting them inside an auto layout. And now make sure that this is touching the end here. Don't worry about that. And I'll also make sure that this is also touching here. So for the spacing between them, make sure you're changing this from a number to auto. So it's going to touch this end. Looking at this font, I'm going to come back in here and make sure that I'm using the Nonito as my font family. The same thing with this, make sure we're using Nonito. That is fine. So the next thing is to create another section here. So I'm going to hit letter O on my keyboard to create an ellipse. I'm going to resize this to 32. Once this has been resized to 32, we can add a stroke to this. So I'll hit the plus sign to add a stroke. We can then drag this and drop this outside. But for this, I want my stroke to be white. Once this is white, I can hit the action button here and go to plugins. Then search for Unsplash. Then hit this and let's wait for this to load. Once this is loaded, I'm going to drag this somewhere here and search for profile. Once we have this, I'm going to use this image. I'll select this, Command D to duplicate this. So I'll select this to item 1, hold shift, then Command D to duplicate, then drag this down again because we want to choose other images. I'll select this. I'll use this here. So I can select this other one and add this. And one more, Command D, and I have the last one here. Let's see. We can add this again. So once I have these items, I can right click here and click on this icon and create a component set. So this is going to be profile, let's say images. Once we have this, we can click on assets, go to local components, and we can drag one of this here. Having this here, press Command D to duplicate, then we can drag this. I'll repeat the same process again. So we now have 5 images. Select this item and we can select Eclipse 2. Do the same, Eclipse 3. Select this, 4 and 5. So we have all of these items. So we can select item 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5. Shift A to put them in an auto layout. So for the spacing between them, which is this, we can use a minus value. So I'll use -10, just they are now tucked in together. So let's hit letter T again on the keyboard. We can say width 35 plus, shift plus customers, like so. And I'll make sure that this is Nonito, sans, and this is medium. And we can leave this, set this to 14. And for the spacing, we can go -3. And once we have this, I'll press Shift A to also put this in an auto layout. Now I'm going to make sure that the height of this should be 32. So I'll come here and reduce the height to 32. Once this has been set, hit the plus sign here to add a fill. And I'm going to make sure I'm changing the color of my text to black. Then we can add the corner radius. For this, we can use the 32. And you can just press Command X to cut this, select this and paste this item here. Automatically, it's going to fit in. Once this is fit in, we can also add a fill to this item. Once it is added, we're going to use the same color. So select this and I'll use the pen dropper and click this. So let's play with this. For the corner radius, I'm going to set that to 8. And for the height as well, we're going to set that to 8. And I can now add a stroke color and I'll use the same stroke color, which is this. So if I click out, you see we have this our design. Now select this and add a corner radius to this. I'm just going to set that to 32. So we have our rounded section. You can add more content to this if you want this to be more longer than this. So I'm just going to edit this and I'll say active customers, like so. Then I can grab my text, which is this, and let me bring that in here. So I'll first of all change the color to white, and you can just type this. This is already bold, so I'll make sure that this is Nonito Sans, and I will increase the size of this to 52. And what I'll do is try to adjust this so that we can make this looks like this. Once this is set, I can adjust this. This is how I want this to look. So I can select this again, drag and drop this somewhere in here, and make sure that I'm changing this to like a gray color. So let's just add some little brightness here. And this is going to be Nonito Sans again. So I'm going to save this and let's see how this looks. Okay, 12, let's make this 14. And this looks better. So now the next thing we want to do here is to add 2 buttons. So I can come in here, drag one button, and this is going to be get a demo. So I'm going to use the lowercase here, demo. And this is going to be our primary button. So we can adjust that because I don't like the spacing in here. So I'm going to come back here and select item 1, hold shift to select this other item. And where we have the spacing here, I can just use 16 here and let's see. Yeah, not bad. So this is looking better. So Command D to duplicate this, but make sure we're changing this to default. And this is going to be get started free, like so. Then select these 2 items, Shift A to put them in an auto layout. So once you've done that, we can select these 2 items first, Shift A to put them in an auto layout. Then we can group item 1, 2, and 3. Shift A, and I'll make sure they are inside an auto layout. So let's reduce the size of this to 38 and see how this looks. Okay, this is great, but this can be better. If I select this and click the presentation layer here, let's see how it's going to look on our device. Once this is open, you'd see this is looking better, but let me adjust the screen size here. So let's set that to fit width, and we have our landing page looking awesome already. So let's just add some colors here. I'll hit letter R on my keyboard and create a frame like so. Once I have this, I'll drag this somewhere here and right click and make sure you're sending this to back. Once this has been sent to back, all you need to do is to add an effect to this. But before we do that, let's change the color to this our primary color. So once it has been changed, then we can add the effect. So this is going to be layer blur. And for the layer blur, I will set this around 400 or 500, any amount. Don't worry about this. We're going to control that. So if you go back to the preview, you see we have this, and this is actually looking ugly. So here, this is actually not looking great. So what I want to do is to come in here and let's reduce the opacity. Let's start with 30. And if I should come in here, don't worry about this. By the time I just try to push one of this here a little, so use your arrow or direction key on your keyboard, we should have this. So you see now we have that color here around this design. So you can even try to push this because I want this somewhere around the text here, not affecting this region because we're going to add another effect to this. So we now have our mesh, but I would recommend you go somewhere around 20 or less than 20. On a very good day, I'll use 15 because on a brighter screens, you will see the effect. So let me also adjust this again, push it down so that we don't get that spacing. So here, let's add 1 or 2 lines here. This is like one of the fun part of this. I will use the pen tool and then add, or let me come in here because I'm going to use these colors. I'll press shift, click, and then hold shift to drag. So let's just create something like this so we can close this. So we now have our stroke. So let's increase the size of this to 20, though the size we need is 1. So here we're going to change the color of this to gradient instead of solid. So now let's add a third color to this. So the first color here is going to be this our blue color, this blue. So that's our first color. So the second color will be this purple, which is this. And then the last color will be this our color here. Once we have these colors, we can start adjusting this inside our design. So let me just close this. This is what we want. Let me drag this and drop it inside here. But how is this going to, sit in very well here? So let's do some little settings here. I'll come back in here and try to adjust this. Let's just rotate this because we want the purple to take at least more space. So I'll just drag this down like so. And I'll do the same thing. I'll drag this down like so. So, but the edge here and also this edge here, we want it to blend with the background. So the first thing we're going to do is to change that to 5. I'll do this and I'll also change this to 5. Yeah, it's blending, but not much. So don't worry about that. You click on this blue color here, click, and then let's drag this down here. So by the time you start dragging it down, you see it's now blending with the background at this edge. So you can do the same thing. Make sure you click this color and then drag this till it automatically then blends with whatever you are having here. So once this is blend, or once you're done with this, all you need to do is to now adjust the size of this stroke to 1. So instead of 20, we can use 1. And when I click, we have this here. And you can adjust the brightness of this. Let's go somewhere around 60 for the whole of this. And then we can make it 50. Reduce the brightness. So we can have one of this. And let's look at the preview here. You see we have this nice looking line here. And I can select this particular stroke, Command D, drag, and then maybe drops one somewhere here. Not inside this frame. So I'm just going to use the arrow key on my keyboard, the direction key. So I'm going to press Command D again. So let's bring this somewhere here. So I'm just arranging this randomly. Command D. I'm not going to do that, so I'll select this Command D. So I can drag this with my cursor. Let's keep this somewhere here like so. But let's make sure that we right click and send this to back. Send to back. So if I come back in here, you see we are having these lines around our designs. So if you take your time, you can just get something better than this. But then this is just random. I'm just doing this at random. So here we can also add more lightning to this. I'm going to hit letter O on my keyboard, add this. So we're going to use the same effect. So I'm going to add this, and let's use the plus sign to add effect, layer blur 500 here. So I'm going to drag this and make sure right click and send to back here, send to back. So I can bring this somewhere here. This is still behind our design. So if we drop this here, and if I come back to this our design, you see we have this effect here. But you need to also work on this color. You need to reduce the brightness of this. So let's go somewhere around 50. And if I come back in here, I'm just going to adjust this a little. Let's adjust this a little. And we have this here. So, but if you want a more brighter color, you can increase this, but I'll recommend you stay within that range. I just grabbed a screenshot from one of our recent tutorial that I want to use here. So I'll hold Command Shift and then I'll adjust this to fit into this our container. So I'll hold Shift and adjust this. So once we have this, I'm going to push this down here. So if I select this our design here and we try to preview, you see we have our dashboard and this is already looking great. So what I want to do here is to add more effect to this to beautify this our design. I'm going to select this, Command D to duplicate, then drag it somewhere here. What we want to do is to make sure that this is touching somewhere here. So if you come back in here, you notice this it's looking aligned with this our dashboard. So you can even select this and increase the height of this if you want more of this. Make sure you're holding Shift like I'm doing. So if I have this, you see we have more of this. So we can come back and select this, maybe Control D to duplicate this. I don't want it there. I will just drag it and drop it somewhere here. So I'll drag it and drop it somewhere here. So let me zoom in to make sure that this is also touching this. So one thing I've noticed, you see we have this here. So we can make this or give this a rounded corner radius. So we can come back in here. While selecting this our dashboard, we can just give it a rounded of 24. You can use any of your dashboard and you see this fits in perfectly. So I'm going to select a prototype screen for this our design. Let's try to open it inside. So I'm going to select this and let's wait for this to load. So this is how our hero section looks. Before we round up, let me quickly make some arrangement here. I'm going to select this section and center this here, and I can push it to the top a little, and this item here I'll make sure it's at the center as well as this our design. So we can come back in here again and preview this our design, and it is looking stunning. So if you want this to be more up, you can also always push this to the top here, and you can also align this to the top so we can see this properly, and this alignment looks better than the initial one. If you're new to my channel, please kindly hit the subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.